أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا ومولانا محمد صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اهتدى بهداه إلى يوم الدين فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي ربي لا تؤاخذني مما يقولون واغفر لي ما لا يعلمون واجعلني خيرا مما يظنون أما بعد. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Welcome to the House of Dua and welcome to the channel from which you learn about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, about His creation, about His message and about His messenger, and of course, about His preferred religion known as Al-Islam. Welcome to the channel from which you learn about how to succeed in the world we live today and how to succeed even better when you meet Allah on the day of accountability. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, in today's presentation, our focus is to draw attention to the plight of the poor in today's world. I'm sure this is no longer a new subject to you. When you take a look at the environment around you, you definitely will find those who are struggling, those who are not sure where their next meal will come from, those who, in some cases, have no homes to live in, those who, by virtue of their standard of living, their level of indebtedness is far higher than their income sources. As a result of that, they fall back all the time in panic, thinking of what will come next. My dear brothers, my dear sisters, we are living in a world in which the rich gets richer and the poor gets poorer. The picture varies from one country to another, but this is a worldwide epidemic. Even though people are not falling down and dying as a result of hunger, but then a lot of people are having sleepless nights. They are not sure where to go to meet their daily living. The situation is even more exacerbated in countries where there are wars, fighting going on, and the poor being forced to move from their places of domicile to seek refuge in some other countries. In some cases, those refugee camps have now become permanent homes for the poor. My dear brothers, my dear sisters, how did we come to find ourselves in this manner? Let's not forget that all of us are human beings, the poor, the rich, and those in between. We are all human beings, and we all need the basics of life. That is, shelter, food, health, and in some cases, transportation. But unfortunately, these basics have become unaffordable to many people across the world. And this is not what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator, the sustainer, the provider, and the curer, the one who has brought us to this life. This is not what He has intended for us as human beings. So how has it come to be like this? It is unspeakable to see the deprivation that is going on across the world. In the developing countries, it's even worse. It's much more widespread. But in the advanced countries, it's not so much widespread, but its effect is most devastating. The reason is obvious. In the advanced countries, the individual is on his own. He has no one else to support him or her outside what is provided by the system, by the society. But in the developing countries, at least you have your brothers, you have your sisters, and everyone is everyone's keeper. That's a big advantage. And when we come to the Muslim countries, the picture is not different, but then it's also not as bad. It may be widespread, but then, the effect is mitigated by the principle of zakah, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded upon us as Muslims to pay in order to alleviate the sufferings of those who are poor. My dear brothers, my dear sisters, poverty does not have any boundary in today's world. In advanced countries, in developing countries, and in the countries in between, there is a high level of poverty. What do we mean by those who are poor? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala identified them in the Quran, in several verses of the Quran, especially in Surah Al-Baqarah. In verse 173 of Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declared, لِلْفُقَرَاءِ الَّذِينَ أُحْصِرُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ لَا يَسْتَطِيعُونَ ضَرْبًا فِي الْأَرْضِ يَحْسَبُهُمُ الْجَاهِلُ أَغْنِيَاءَ مِنْ التَّعَفُّفِ تعرفه بسيماهم لا يسألون إلحافا وما تنفقوا من خير فإن الله به عليم. In this surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala identifies a certain group of people known as the poor. The general word for it is al-fuqara, those who are poor. Allazina usiru fi sabilillah, those who are restricted through no fault of theirs. In other words, they are handicapped, either because they are blind, or they are deaf, or they are deficient in reasoning, or they are crippled. As a result of that, they are not able to move around like other people. And unfortunately, those of us who are doing well, when we see them, we walk past them thinking that they don't have any need. They are not in difficulty. You know why? Because they themselves, they don't beg at all, or they don't find it enjoyable to go out to beg anybody. And therefore, we assume that they are doing well. That is the plight of the poor person. But that's not all. There are those who are even in worse condition, known as the Masakin. For example, in Surah Al-Baqarah again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, righteousness is not whether you face the east or face the west to worship, but righteousness includes وَآتَى الْمَالَ عَلَىٰ حُبِّهِ ذَوِي الْقُرْبَىٰ وَالْيَتَامَىٰ وَالْمَسَاكِينَ وَابْنَ السَّبِيلِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here identifies those who are even in a greater difficulty than the poor. For example, the Masakin. Who are the Masakin? Those who are needy. They are needy in the sense that if you don't give them, they have nothing at all. The difference between them and the poor is that the poor, he has some, but it's not enough to meet his or her needs. So the Masakin does not have at all. What about the Yatama? That is, those who are orphans. There are over 153 million orphans in today's world. Children have been thrown into orphanage because of the fratricidal wars that are going on across the world, in which their parents either got killed or missing. Therefore, through no fault of theirs, they became orphans. What about Wabun Sabil? Those who have traveled, but they got cut off because they got stranded as a result of the loss of their belongings. They may be rich in their place of origin, but while in a journey as a traveler, they got lost. They lost their belongings. Such people are also handicapped. These are the handicapped people in the society that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to help. And He has revealed several verses of the Quran encouraging us to help the poor, so that everybody at least will be able to have something for his or her living. Allah does not want us to ignore some while others are doing well. As a result of this, He prescribed for us as believers the principle of zakah, which requires those who are rich to be able to help those who are poor by paying 2.5% of their income to support those who are poor in the society. Just imagine if all of us were to actually, sincerely discharge that obligation. There will be no poverty around us. My dear brothers, my dear sisters, there are other categories of people displaced by the economic system in their own countries. They become deprived, disadvantaged, for no fault of theirs. Either there is discrimination as a result of racism, or there are other implicit biases in the system that is working against them. As a result of that, they are not able to live up to the standard expected of them. They find themselves all the time below the poverty line. But in the same societies that we live, especially in the advanced countries, you find people who are super, super rich. Even in the developing countries as well, you find people who are super, super rich. You find people with private aeroplanes. You find people with yachts and barges by the sea. You find people with homes across the world, mansions in different cities of the world. And you find people who are riding the car that is just leaving the factory today, whereas others are sitting outside there under the 100 degrees temperature or temperature that is below 10 to 20 degrees. This is the travesty of life, my dear brothers and sisters. So we want to remind ourselves that this is a problem that affects all of us. In most cases, all of us believe that it's the fault of the government, and only the government alone should be able to solve this problem. No, you have power, I have power. You have the means, I have the means to be able to look at the right or look at the left or look in front of us or look behind to identify that person who is struggling and be able to put a smile on that person's face. It doesn't necessarily have to be the responsibility of the government alone. That's why we are using this opportunity to call on individuals in today's world, as well as groups and societies, not to wait for the government in order to help those who are around you, especially now that we are reaching the critical situation. Many people are dying as a result of hunger. Many people are dying as a result of exposure to different circumstances. Many people are dying as a result of lack of health care in their vicinities. These are people that need to be helped. You can imagine if all of us were able to afford our daily basic needs. It would be a very happy world. But because some people find themselves disadvantaged, how do they respond? They respond angrily. Many of them go about looking for guns to kill others. It's an act of frustration. And they get to that level because they just feel that the society was working against them and they have been abandoned. And therefore, the only way to react is to take themselves out and take others along with them. That's not a desirable thing, but that's an occurrence that is happening to this world, especially in the developed countries. And dear brothers, my dear sisters, as I said, poverty does not know any boundary. It affects everybody across the world. Let's go to the developed countries, for example, like the United States of America. Those of you who are outside the United States of America would think that it's a land of milk and honey. No, it's not like that. As a matter of fact, poverty here is also endemic. There are people who have been in it for years, they are not able to get out of it. Let's look at some of the basic statistics. In America, for example, the population of the poor people, these are official figures. The population of the poor people is about 43 million, which is about 11.something% of the population. America is a country of 332 million people, in which about 43 million fall into poverty almost every year. When we say they fall into poverty, we mean that they are not sure of their 3 square meals in a day. That is the reality in American situation. According to statistics also, in America alone, we have over 500,000 people who are homeless. I mean people who are sitting by the roadside, who are sleeping under the bridges, who have nowhere to go when the sun is about to set. It happens in America, the superpower of the world. The number one country the world is looking up to for assistance. This is the reality of the situation in America. What about healthcare? People without healthcare in America, about 33.something million people have no healthcare. In other words, if they were to fall sick tomorrow, it's between them and the mercy of God. They have no medical care to rely upon. If this is happening in America, you can imagine what is happening in other countries across the world, the poor developing countries. This is reality. And the situation in America is not different from Britain, from Germany, from Italy, from Spain, from Japan, from South Korea, from those nations that call themselves G7 nations. G7 nations in terms of what? When your citizens are suffering, it seems like an act of wickedness on the part of us as human beings to see our fellow human beings suffer. And those that we have selected or elected into positions to find solutions to these problems, What do? They turn their back immediately. They begin to make arguments to tell you that you are on your own. You are the one responsible for your own problem. Whereas in fact, it is their own social policies that have thrown a lot of people into poverty. And dear brothers and dear sisters, we can keep on talking about this. But the truth of the matter is, to help the poor is a key that you need to enter Jannah. The Prophet Sallallahu Ta'ala was in several of his hadith remind us of the need for us to help the poor. And he himself, no one could have been as generous as he was when he was on this planet. He could give out his last dress. He could give out his last food. He could give out his last money in his pocket to those who were in need. We're not going to bore you with all those hadith today because the reality is obvious. But I remind myself that when you put a smile in somebody's face, how do you feel in the first instance? Don't you feel happy? Don't you feel that you have helped somebody? In addition to that good feeling that you have, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised you a great reward. Allazina yunfikuna amwalahum bil-layli wan-nahari sirran wa alaniya falahum ajruhum 'inda rabbihim wala khawfun 'alayhim wala hum yahzanun. Those who spend their wealth in the night and in the day, secretly or openly, and they spend such wealth according to the rules and regulations set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In other words, helping those who are in need, as I've just stated. Allah says on the day of accountability, such people will not have cause to grieve and they will not have cause to be afraid. In other words, they will be given best treatment in Akhirah and be given Jannah. May Allah give us Jannah. My dear brothers, my dear sisters. Again, Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يسألونك ماذا ينفقون ما أنفقتم من خير فللوالدين والأقربين واليتامى والمساكين وابن السبيل. Again, in this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the Prophet, if they ask you, what is the best form of expenditure we should make that will give us reward, that will give us self-satisfaction, and give us multiplication of our wealth, give us purity of our wealth, also assure us of the reward of Allah on the day of accountability. Tell them it is the expenditure they make on their parents and those who are close to them by blood, and those who are orphans, and those who are cut off, and those who are destitute or the needy. These are the expenditures that make sense. These are the expenditures that will bring joy to you in this world and the Akhirah. Therefore, I want to encourage you, just as I encourage myself, to look out for somebody who is close to you and try and bring smile to that person's face. Try and lift up somebody so that the person will be able to find meaning in the world we live today. There are so many people that this life has become meaningless to because of the circumstances of their lives. Therefore, let's try and lift up ourselves, because if we do, all of us will be happier for it. All these social problems that we are facing in today's world, such as killing of people, such as criminalities or drug abuse and other social consequences of that, all of them will be eliminated if everyone at least will have that ability to take care of his or her basic needs. My dear brothers, my dear sisters, Allah has promised a great deal of reward to all of us if we do this. And that's why He has made it obligatory upon ourselves as Muslims that zakat or sadaqah that He asks us to give out. There are 8 categories of people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala identified in Surah At-Tawbah that should be the target of our zakat. Innama sadaqatu lil fuqara wal masakin wal amilina 'alayha wal mu'allafati qulubuhum wa fi rikab wal gharimin wa fi sabilillah wa ibn sabil faridatan min Allah wallahu alimun hakim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says zakah or sadaqah should be directed at the following categories of people: the poor, poor, the needy, those who are in charge of distribution of zakat, those who are in bondage, those who are overwhelmed by their level of indebtedness, those who are stranded on the way, and those who are fighting the cause of Allah, who are helping in the way of Allah. These are the categories of people that we need to help. And you look at all of them, they are basically people who are handicapped in the society. So let's identify them. They are part of us in the society. They are either our brothers or sisters or our co-workers, or they are our friends, or they may not even be our friends. They could be people of other faiths. It doesn't matter. Poverty does not know religion. Poverty does not know your color. Poverty does not know what kind of blood is flowing in you. You are poor, you are poor. You need food, you need food. It's as simple as that. Whatever color of that person, the religion of that person, the language of that person is immaterial. Let's try as much as possible to lift up ourselves. That will be better for us in the world we live now, and that will be better for us in the akhirah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us overcome this problem of the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help lift up those who are currently below the survival line. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make life easy for us in this world and make the hereafter better for us. Subhanallah wa bihamdi, subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.